lifestyle has caught fire, and we talk about the rewards and challenges of it. This is the Wandering Worker Podcast with Matt Lloyd.
Welcome to the Wandering Worker Podcast. I am your host, Matt Lloyd. The Wandering Worker is powered by Magic Apple Technology. We've been saving good businesses from bad phone systems since 2008. Whether you're tuning in from the comfort of your home office, a cafe, or exploring a new corner of the world, this podcast is your compass to navigate the ever-evolving landscape of remote work. We'll uncover invaluable insights, share personal stories, and connect with experts who have mastered the art of wandering while working. One of those experts is our guest today, Gary. Thank you for being on the show. How are you today?
I'm fine, Matt. Thanks so much for having me.
So before we get started, we do just a random 5 questions. These are just fast, simple questions, and they're goofy. There's a little duck on the generator. It's just a weird little thing. So are you ready?
I am.
Okay. What talent would you show off in a talent show?
Juggling.
Juggling. Oh, you juggle. Oh, that's cool. I attempt to juggle. I'm not very good at it, but like the little balls I can juggle, but not the bowling pins or any of that kind of stuff.
Cats are a little difficult, but
right.
Tennis balls are okay.
Yeah, that makes sense. Pirates or ninjas?
Pirates.
Yeah, I would agree with you. What's something you wish you'd figured out sooner? That's a long list for me, man.
It's a long thing. People matter more than stuff.
Yeah. Relationships over, experiences over stuff. I get that. Can we give you something? There we go. What's the best thing you got from one of your parents?
Oh, that's a great question. I'd say from my mom, it's just, she was just loving and giving and kind and caring. I wish I could be more like her.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, last question. What's the last book you gave up on and stopped reading?
I would say I got to get back to reading it now. Created for Connection. It's a great book about human relationships. I need to get back to reading it, but I started it and stopped.
Yeah. Sometimes I'll like get on a kick of business books, and then I'll get halfway through one, and I'm like, okay, I've got to read some fiction or read something else because it's too much. Great. Thank you for that. So briefly introduce yourself. Tell us your name. Tell us what you do. Just a good introduction of who you are.
Sure. My name is Gary Aldridge, and I work for myself, Aldridge Valuation Advisors. I do all things business value. I measure value through business valuations. I grow value as a fractional CFO. Mm-hmm. I teach value through an online course I developed called Leveraging You. Mm-hmm. And now I'm harvesting value. I'm actually helping a couple clients because I worked with them in the past. Now they've asked me to help them sell their business. And I spent a lot of time on that today, and both of them are moving toward a successful close. So I'm really excited about that. Yeah.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
What kind of led you to what you do?
Oh, mercy. I started early. I was just explaining this the other day where starting when I was 5 years old, really seeing my older siblings playing a game of Monopoly, and I tried to play. I was 5. They were 9 and 12. They wouldn't let me play, and I stubborned my way into the game and ended up beating them. It's the only thing I ever beat either one of them at doing because they're both infinitely smarter and more athletic than I was. But that was my one victory at 5. But I've always been attracted to math and just solving problems and fixing things. And so, I just think about trying to maximize the value of a business. And so that's what I'm passionate about and adamant about.
So were you a CFO with a company for a while or
30 years, different companies. Yeah.
So when did you break off and start on the consulting side of stuff? I
started in 2010. So I went out on my own and just started working with companies, mostly as a fractional CFO. Uh-huh. Then in 13, became valuation expert, started doing business valuation work, which I really love doing.
Yeah, we had that, we did that probably 2 years ago at Magic Apple and had a company come in. It was a company that like does mergers and acquisitions, and they came in and just did a good evaluation through our books. And because at the time we were thinking, we were thinking maybe we want to sell in 3 or 4 years or something. And after the evaluation, we saw we had so much room to grow it and the opportunities we had to grow. So we were like, let's not sell and just grow it.
Yeah. So I sum it up by saying I measure and grow value. So, a couple short stories. Worked with a client a few years ago. His value was about $600,000-700,000. 3-4 years ago, sold in December for $2.5 million.
That's awesome.
Another one similar 4 years ago, $600,000-700,000 in value. Today it's worth several $1 million.
Yeah. So that's it. When you're under that $5 million, is it seller discretionary expenses and income that you're selling off as a multiple? Because are you selling off EBITDA at that point?
Mostly off of cash flow.
Right.
Yeah. So you'll take their financials, you'll normalize them, adjust them, take all the personal stuff out,
right?
Try to get it down to what's the buyer actually buying, what do they get, and then trying to, a lot of folks will pull a multiple out of the air, but because I do valuations too, to the value of the company based on projecting cash flow, discounting that back, coming up with a number, seeing what that multiple is, then seeing what that return on investment is for the buyer. Okay, and then trying to explain how. If I was on, because I can be on both sides of the table, not on the same transaction, but I've been on both sides where I'm saying, hey, if I was going to buy this company, here's what I'd pay for it, and here's why, and here's what I'd do with it, which is exactly the conversation I'm going to have next week with a prospective buyer.
Yeah. So what's one thing that you've noticed with all the companies you've worked with? What's one of the big things you noticed that you're like, hey, best piece of advice to give somebody looking to sell, first thing to do would be X? Work
your way out of a job.
Yeah.
You're the business owner, work your way out of a job so that your business is not 100% or 80% dependent upon you. If you want to know whether it is or not, just take off a couple days. Don't tell anybody, just don't show up, see what happens. Then do it for a week, then do it for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And if your business craters, then it's all you. You are the business and you have nothing to sell. If it keeps going and growing, now you've built a business that is marketable and sellable that somebody wants to buy.
What are of a valuable business? What are some of the markers that people are looking for nowadays?
The people. We just had this conversation, and we're right in the middle of discussions with them, and they said we need younger DNA in the office because this was a team of people that, like me, were 60 plus, and they said, hey, we're buying a company. We don't want to buy one with a bunch of folks that are like us that are about to move on. We need people who are going to run this for the next 10 or 20 years. So they're looking for people, and I preach and teach that the most valuable assets or biggest liabilities that are not on your financials are your people.
Yeah.
Especially in a small business, one person can make or break a business.
Absolutely.
And you can't carry people who are not producing.
Yeah. Well, like I say, and I always tell people when we bring them on, I'm like, we are a small business, and the spotlight is always an ever-changing thing. It always is moving around. I said, it's almost, think of it as music. Don't be the one left with the spotlight on you. It's like keep working, keep making things happen, and then you'll be fine. But at the end of the day, when the music stops, you don't want that spotlight shining on you because everybody's like, that's money that we don't have to spend. Maybe we shouldn't be spending that money.
That's right. Because every dollar you spend is really, think of it not as an expense, but as an investment.
Yeah.
And every dollar coming back in is return on investment. If you start thinking about it, you will become a little more detached, a little more depersonalized. Okay. It's not a bad thing. And you're evaluating people and processes and technology. Do I want to spend on X? What do I get back?
Yeah.
And changes the narrative.
Yeah. Do you find that companies that have spent a lot of time and energy on processes and culture and those type things, I know I've heard in the past that doesn't actually equate to dollars, but it does equate to the attractiveness of one over another one.
It absolutely does. And I have a podcast series as well, and so I bring subject matter experts to the table to talk about whatever it is that they do that helps the business owner maximize their business value. So I talked with a lady here, a private equity firm here in Nashville, and she said they go through the due diligence, look at all the numbers just like everybody else does, but they look at corporate fit. They look at corporate culture fit. And if at the end of the day, all the numbers may add up, but if that corporate culture fit is not there, they will pass. If it's not going to be something that's a good fit for them, they'll walk away, even if the numbers make it. So it's a big deal, and it's hard to quantify.
It is. It's hard to really define unless you spend a lot of time in it. We've gone through the trouble of really putting our culture and putting it on paper and, making it where it is a very vivid graphical part of who we are. But at the same time, if you're not in that, it could also just be word salad or word, dressing and not real. So it's hard to, how do you, or let me say this, how have you witnessed others evaluate culture in a company?
I think the culture is not necessarily what the owner says or thinks it is.
It's what the people
you ask
show,
the people
right?
in there what it's like to work there. And I heard a guy speak here in Nashville in Green Hills. He owned his own nursing home, high end, high dollar, and he had a really high turnover rate. And so he went to talk to the people that are providing the care and asking them about their job. And then he would find out, because if you talk with the people that own it and the management, they're going to give you a tour and then you give you their spiel, right?
Mm-hmm.
You talk to the people that are actually executing, then you get a whole different story. That's your corporate culture.
Right.
It's the people on the front lines, and it may be different than what you think it is.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. In a lot of the business that you've worked with, is there something that you've noticed that has started to become, let's see, how do I want to put this? Blaringly obvious that it's kind of a trend, but it's not necessarily a positive trend. People are putting value in something that there really isn't a lot of value in.
Well, they get emotionally attached to their business,
like makes it their identity in some ways.
Very much. People, especially entrepreneurs, have started a business, been at it for 10, 20, 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
Spoke with a business owner, and he said, I wouldn't sell my business for less than $5 million. And so I'm the guy who asks the hard questions.
When it's worth
okay,
not that much.
What do I get?
Yeah.
If I'm a buyer and I stroke you a check for $5 million, which I cannot do, what do I get? And he was stumped. He really didn't have an answer.
Right.
I said, well, the answer is I don't get much. You got a handful of people and a couple of computers. You rent your office. You have no land, buildings, and equipment. And
it's all goodwill at
you
that
have
point.
a couple of personal relationships that you developed.
Yep.
But that goes away when you leave.
Yeah.
So I don't get anything. So I'm not going to do that. He says, well, I still wouldn't sell. So, well, maybe, but no one's going to pay you that.
Right.
You know?
I know that we purchased a couple companies over the 15-year period. We've done a few smaller one and one decent size acquisition. And it's funny when we talk to some of these guys, especially in telecom, the business that I'm in, they've been, they make a good living a year. They draw good money out of it. And they're like, why would I sell it for that when I can do this? And I was like, well, if you don't want to sell it, why are we even talking? You know what I mean? It's like, I'm only interested if you want to sell it, because if you're not ready to sell it, there is no number that's going to make sense to you. Right.
That's right.
And then when they go, well, maybe I am, more interested to talk about it. And I was like, do the same thing. I'm like, well, you don't have really any assets. You've got inventory on old stuff that we wouldn't sell or anything else that would be dumpstered the day one.
Yeah.
You don't own a building or anything, and if you did, I'm not interested in real estate right now anyway. Right. It's like all I'm looking for is your customer base, right? And if you have some key people that I can bring, I'll bring those on. But technology and everything, these are older, antiquated. It's like I'm just buying you for the opportunity to grow your customer base onto my platform.
That's right.
And that's all this is kind of worth. And so it's a hard conversation to have, like with somebody that's been building this thing up for 20 years and all that. It's like at the point when you're ready to move on or ready to quit, you have my number, call me then, because I know what's going to happen when you do that. You're going to have a hard time trying to find somebody that wants it.
And the time to start working toward that is now.
Yeah.
Whether your horizon is 1, 3, 10, 20 years,
yep.
You start today.
Yeah.
Building for a buyer.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you just own your own job.
Exactly.
And there's nothing wrong with that. That's what you want. But then you're part of the 70% of businesses that do not sell.
Yeah.
Now, why would you want to do that when you could build something for a buyer and you make money today and tomorrow?
And it's really crazy because a lot of, I'm also in the EO chapter here in Nashville. I've been in EO for 8 years. And a lot of the guys in there that have been in business forever, and I've had multiple guys in my own forum that have gotten to the point where they want to sell, and they're like, yeah, it's just not, I'm not going to be able to get anything. And it's like, no, guys, you just got to think about it a little differently than you are.
That's exactly right.
And start planning towards, it's a different business when you're trying to sell a business than it is when you're trying to grow a business. To me, those are two totally different paths. One has a lot of clean up and shine and spit, plus the other one, it's dirt and grime, and we're building, right?
That's right.
And so it's interesting to talk to these guys and the frustration and the stress they have around, I've spent all these years growing it, now I got to figure out how I'm going to let it go.
Yeah, well, you start today by looking at your own business through the eyes of a buyer.
Right.
If you start doing that, then you'll change. Your whole lens will change.
Yeah.
But you got to be detached. You got to be objective.
Yeah.
And look at your own business like a buyer would look at it. What would I change? What people would I change? Who would I keep, coach, or lose?
Yeah.
What processes would I change? What technology would I change? And if you would change that as a buyer, why don't you change it now? Then you'll realize the value for it later.
Yeah.
Otherwise, buyers are going to put it in, and you're not going to get the value.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened to us when, like, there's a few things that I knew from day one made sense. And that was, I don't want to work in this business forever. I'm going to work in it while I have to now to grow it. But my goal has always been, how do I get out of this thing? I just want to work on it, not in it. And if I do want to work in it, I want to do it because I want to do it. It's my choice and I choose to do it, not because I have to. So I've worked really hard from day one to remove myself from the business. My business partner, on the other hand, had not. So he was like, he's been catching up the last few years. And he's at that same point now to where he's kind of also worked himself out of it, and he's not having to do all the day-to-day support and all that. He still does a lot day-to-day because he's the brains, he's the smart guy. I mean, he's the technician engineer type level. So he still does a lot of that, but it's gotten a lot better and we've kind of separated each other out. But one of the things we went through the last time, and it's funny because it's exactly what you said happened. We brought the evaluator and he evaluated everything. He was like, man, you guys are, looking really good. You could sell your business for X today. And we're like, well, that's pretty cool. And I was like, what if we hung around for and grew, made a couple changes? And I was like, we could 3 to 5 multiply that number. He goes, absolutely you could. And I was like, okay. So then we were like, we were going to just upgrade some basic stuff on it. And we were like, let's spend some money and let's upgrade a lot. So we ended up spending like $250,000, $300,000 last year to upgrade everything from the platform up. And, let's see if we make this even bigger and see what we can do with it. Because I enjoy that growth part. That's something I like. I like sticking to something and getting it to start working the way it's supposed to, that I envisioned it up here anyway. Yeah. So no, I totally get that. So you enjoy this, right? I mean, it's a thing that makes you kind of feel good when they sign off on the dotted line with one of your customers. And
I love it.
Yeah.
I'm passionate about it. I've told my son, I said, I'm actually obsessed by it, but I love it.
Yeah.
And for me, it's like a game. And once you learn the rules of the game, then it's just repetition.
Yeah.
I love it.
So here's a weird question, because I'm always, what do you make it a part of your process with people looking to sell their business? Do you talk about what they're going to do once they sell the business?
Absolutely.
And what is some advice you give around that? Because that's a tricky thing what these guys are going to do, because they're used to being in charge of everything, and now all that goes away.
Yeah, there's a think tank called the Exit Planning Institute. I'm a member, certified exit planning advisor, and all that kind of stuff. They say that 70% of business owners express profound regret within 12 months of selling their business.
I thought they would be like
within 12
3.
months.
I thought it'd be way
probably
less.
and the reason is their whole identity, their emotional connection to that business. It's their identity. It's who they are.
Yeah.
It's their meaning and purpose for why you get up in the morning. So you got to ask yourself today, like, what's my meaning and purpose going to be? Am I going to whatever? And that could be whatever it is you want it to be.
Right.
I want to travel around the world. I want to buy a bunch of toys, or I want to give back, or whatever. This is a father of a friend of mine. I went to school with his son years ago, and he started this auto repair shop, tire shop. And I'm sitting in there, and I knew the dad, but he's a big guy. But anyway, he just says, out of the blue, he says, I own all this. I said, great. And he said, I don't owe anybody anything. I said, well, then why are you here? I did. I said, then why are you here, and why are you telling me this? And he said, I had a business, wholesale tire, built it, sold it, and I hunted everywhere I wanted to hunt. I fished everywhere I wanted to fish. I played golf everywhere I wanted to play golf.
Now what?
And I was bored.
Yeah.
And then my kids are coming up, and they needed a place to work, so I bought a piece of land and threw up a building, and here we go. So he he had no meaning and purpose. The same thing, actually flew to New York, Wall Street, great experience for me. Met with a guy, we were trying to raise some money. Similar experience. He was the point guy for Old Bell South that bought the first wireless company. It was a really big deal, $1 billion deal back in the early 90s, I think. And he's dressed like perfectly. I mean, there's not a wrinkle in him. He's just dressed to the hilt. And, here I was, younger guy, 40-ish, and I said, why are you doing this? I mean, I know you don't have to do this, so why are you? And he said, well, I did the deal. I bought a house on the beach in Florida, and every morning I got my cup of coffee and I walked out on the deck and I watched the waves for a few hours. And I did that for a few weeks, and I thought, I'm going nuts. I got to have something to do. So he said, now I still have the house on the beach, but I fly to New York on Monday, and I go home when I want to. If I want to go home Wednesday, Thursday, I do. Friday, so, but the question, to answer your question, is what is your why?
Mm-hmm.
What is your reason? What is your purpose for getting up in the morning? And you got to answer that.
Yeah.
And may take some time, but you got to find that thing that keeps you going. Otherwise, you're just going to wilt. You're going to fade, and you're going to be miserable.
I asked that question because that was the question that I asked companies that we were looking to buy. That was one of the first questions I would ask them. I was like, let's say we make this thing happen, we sell it tomorrow. What are you going to do day to day? What are you going to do?
Yeah.
And I knew the guys that didn't have a good answer, the likelihood of that deal actually closing was going to be a lot less than the guy that says, oh, I'm going to go do this, or I've got this other thing set up. My son and I are going to go do this. I felt like this is holding them back. I'm helping them make that next step and get where they want to go. If they didn't have any direction, have any place to go, then they were going to drag their feet on this because this was their life right now.
They think it's a good idea till they get closer. Then they get closer to that finish line. Like, oh no, now what? What am I going to do? And they push it out some more. Well, or like a lot of them say, well, I'll just own it one more year.
Yeah.
And every year it's one more year. Yeah. And then 5-10 years later, it's one more year. And then finally they're not there anymore.
or they write it down to where it's just not worth anything anymore. They had an opportunity to sell at the crest of the wave, and they missed it, and they wrote it right on down to
timing
nothing.
is everything.
It really is.
Yeah.
It really, really is. Well, we kind of got off on a rabbit hole, but it was a good rabbit hole. So, what we talk about a lot on the show is working remotely and not having that normal come to the office 8 to 5 hour in the car to and from, all that kind of stuff. What are you seeing now? And I'll relate this to evaluating a business. What are you seeing nowadays with people when they're looking to buy a business? Is the remote factor something that people talk about?
I wouldn't say that would be primary when you're looking at buying or selling a business. That's part of that corporate culture fit.
Right.
I mean, if your model is I want them in the office and you're buying a company and they're 100% remote, that's not a good cultural fit.
Sure.
There's nothing right or wrong about it. It's not a value statement. It's just different.
Right.
And they're not going to mesh. Either one's not going to mesh into the other. Mm-hmm. Read 2 articles, 2 different billionaires in the U.S. a few months ago. And one of them's like, I'm tired of this remote work. We're going to get them back in the office, and you're going to get back in here. You're going to get fired. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, at the same time, right now, there are 2 job openings for every 1 applicant in the country. So the leverage has moved from employer to employee. Yep. Now, whether you like it or not doesn't matter. That's the way that it is. Yeah. And the second billionaire said that ship has sailed. That's gone. So the answer is, how do we adjust? Mm-hmm. Not try to coerce them back to the in-office, but how do you adjust to that? Okay. And there are pros and cons to both, but, and probably some mix of the middle is probably a good answer.
That's what I think we always ask people, where do you see it going? Do you feel like, if you were to say 100% remote, a hybrid, or 100% in the office, everybody just kind of leans to the center and say it's definitely going to be a hybrid type solution.
There's some definite advantages to in-person working together. You get connection, you get collaboration, you get teamwork, and there's advantages to working remotely. I mean, I'm a lot more productive. I work out of my house, but then I got to watch myself because I'll get off in rabbit holes doing errands or cleaning the house or that kind of stuff. So I got to make sure I'm productive. So, and we just had a podcast about remote work productivity a week or so ago, and we talked about communication plus accountability equals productivity.
Absolutely.
Okay. And so when you boil it down to that, really remote or not remote isn't as big of the question as productivity.
Yeah.
And it's the same formula.
Yeah. For us, it's always, before we found the traction system or the entrepreneurial operating system, EOS, Gino Wickman stuff, before we found all that, it would have been hard for us to be remote because there was too much just up in the air that we could answer face to face, but remote would have been a problem. Yeah. But since we have that, we have our accountability. Everybody's got, metrics that they're responsible for weekly. They align with their goals. Those goals align with the vision of the company and the direction we're going. So as long as, we have our weekly level 10s per department, we do those check-ins, we kind of know where everybody's at. Yeah. And you can tell just on a day-to-day basis because the needle moves every day, one way or another, up or down, it moves.
It does.
And if we're able to see that, we know we're doing what needs to be done. And, believe it or not, like for us, a cultural thing, the communication piece, of course, is a big part of it. But we've moved, like we have a tool that we use. It's the Workplace by Meta, which is just it's a private Facebook for your company. But we like it because it's works like Facebook. It's not as complicated as Slack where you need to learn some hashtags and all this kind of stuff. This is just Facebook, but it's private for our business. And we use the absolute crap out of that thing. And I'm a big GIF. We learned this yesterday. It's not GIF because I say it's GIF. An IT guy that we had on the show said that he read an article. The guy who invented them said it was Jif like the peanut butter. So now I know it's Jif, and now you do too.
Now I know because I didn't know.
Yeah, the same thing. But we have like little hashtags, give good Jif and that kind of stuff where we just constantly and now everybody is constantly, diving deep in the Jif vault to try to find something new and unique to throw up there to give attaboys for when we close deals or when our support, does something fantastic or whatever it may be.
The challenge is it makes us become better leaders and managers.
Way more involved. You can't just go into your office and shut the door when you're remote.
The leaders have to evolve.
Absolutely.
And communicate and hold people accountable and do it in a positive way.
And I like it more. Yeah. I personally like this style of leadership and running a business more because it's really the micromanaging aspect of what a lot of people feel like they have to do to hold the accountability. The positions and the processes hold the accountability, and all we're doing is supporting and celebrating the results of the accountability.
The game has changed. The question is not changing the game back where it was. It's like, how do we change with it?
How do you evolve with it?
How do we evolve with it? How do we adapt?
And how do you take advantage of it?
That's right.
Right? Because the thing that, like I said, we work with a lot of younger people too, and I always talk to people in college and are just about to graduate and everything. It's like, how important is, when you're looking through Indeed and you're looking for jobs and stuff like that, how important is that remote, being able to work hybrid and everything? And it's one of the top two. I mean, it's usually money and that, or it's that and money. Yeah. As long as it's in the industry that they're wanting to do, which they're not looking to accept the industry they want to be in. And it's a company that they feel like is doing good, that they all want to have a purpose. They want to feel like they're helping people, and they want to feel like they have their own existence and they're not just at, their life is being lived to help somebody else's life be better. Right. You know what I mean? They want to really experience life on their own. And I think it's a really interesting time. And this is an interesting generation that's coming into the workforce.
I identify with that because, the clients I work with, I prefer the ones where I feel like I'm making a difference. Yeah. And the ones where I'm not, then I was like, then why am I here?
Exactly. The worst thing I can ever hear is when somebody belittles what I'm doing for them. Like, it's no big deal. It's just, it's like, telephones. Who cares?
I don't want to be where I'm not wanted.
Right. Or not appreciated a little bit.
A little bit. Yeah. I tell people, you don't have to treat me special, just decent. Yeah. Decent's fine.
Yeah. Just respect the fact that I'm doing good work for you.
I'm trying to help you, I'm trying to help you make more money. I really am. Yeah. And I think I'm pretty good at it. Yeah. So just let me do my job.
Exactly. You just want to be like, look, let me take it from here and I'm going to make it all right. We did one job for a company in Nashville, and somebody had done something like, it was a cabling thing that we did. And the lady came in to look at everything before the job was even done. And so there was handwritten, like with a grease pencil on the plates, because he was just getting them laid out. Eventually he would go back and put the little labels and stuff on them. She had a fit over this grease penciled stuff in there. And she was like, this looks janky. And I was like, number one, it's not done yet. Number two, I'm here to help you. Don't get mad at me. Right. We're making this all right for you. Yeah. And at the end, she just had a bad day. And that's what she came in and decided to lay it out on. That just, it is what it is. But yeah, it's definitely something that I believe has changed, and it's never going to be like it was before the pandemic.
No, that's true.
I just don't see it ever going back to that. Now, there's certain jobs, of course, a lot of your technicians, your, hands-on, you're not going to be able to do anything with that. And a lot of people are like, well, it's not fair if that's what,
doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. I just don't think it matters. It's like, hey, man, if you don't want to do, then do something different. I mean, go do something different. But if you're really good at that and you love it, then that's part of why you're doing that, right? That's right. So yeah, it's interesting. Have you worked with any businesses here lately that are completely against it, and what's their reasoning behind being completely against it?
worked with two different clients this year, and one was owner was mid-30s, and he was I would have thought he would have been all remote, but he was not. He was very old school. He said, I want people in the office. I want them here in person. Well, that's okay. It's your shop. You can do what you want. But he was in a very rural place. Mm-hmm. Population is decreasing. The talent pool is very thin, and people are moving away. So, and he just didn't want to adapt, so you struggle. That's what happens.
Yeah.
Versus I just started with another client. They don't have an office. They have 50 employees around the country. It's 100% remote.
Yeah.
Very productive, very efficient. Now we got some challenges, which is why they brought me in to kind of do some things, put some metrics in to hold some people accountable, all that kind of stuff. But their culture is very strong. I mean, they're very connected, and they vet people hard on the front end to make sure they fit in with that culture. And he says, very open, honest, transparent, but they hit it hard.
Yeah, I think to do it right, you got to be a little bit better than other companies. There's stuff you just don't get the opportunity to lax on. Mm-hmm. I've noticed that with ourselves and then with other companies that we've worked with, that especially during the pandemic when we got a bunch of phone calls, we've been telling people, hey, there's no reason to have all this stuff at your office. You need to put it in the cloud, and you don't need to have your phone system hanging in that closet anymore. You don't need to have all your servers and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. You put that out in the cloud so it's more accessible. And it's like, you don't realize how, vulnerable you are. And if you remember in Nashville, right before the pandemic, we had a tornado. And so we had a lot of people that had already lost their buildings and everything else going, I don't have a phone system anymore. I don't have servers anymore because it's all gone. Right. And so they start to understand the real value of, everything needs to go to the cloud. In our industry, that's like a big push, is getting people from premise to cloud-based, whatever they've got going on, just to simplify things, to make it a little bit easier and more accessible. I'm sure you're seeing the same thing with what the stuff you're doing.
I do. I'm gonna use a sports analogy from a coach that used to coach somewhere else. He used to coach at Alabama, and I used to coach at Ole Miss. But anyway, said this is before I'm using NIL and portal in college sports. How that has changed the game. So the head coach, this is Lane Kiffin. I'm an Ole Miss guy. So he says the game has changed. He said I like the rules of NIL and portal, but I don't make the rules. These are the rules that are given to me.
Right.
So I am going to play by the rules the way they are. So he's got, a lot of portal guys, a lot of turnover, everything. Then he hires Pete Golding, defensive coordinator from Alabama at Ole Miss. And Golding says, years ago, we would sign kids out of high school to fit our system. And we taught our system. So today you've got so much turnover, you find out what the kid can do, and then you adjust the system to him. Mm-hmm. Now you translate that in the workplace. You find the person that has the talent and the skill set to do what you want them to do.
Right.
And then the narrative's changed. Instead of, I want you to come work with me. Okay. Well, the narrative has changed. It's like, what will it take for you to come work with us?
Yeah.
What do you need to make this happen? What is compensation and flexibility and remote? And of course, you got to be reasonable and all that kind of stuff. But the narrative's changed. So now it's like, okay, I need your skill set. What do you need to come work with us? What do we need to do for you?
Right.
So that whole narrative's changed. And whether we like it or not, it's really not the question. It's how do we adapt? How do we grow?
Yeah.
How do we evolve? And what works best for you,
Yeah, I know we had talked earlier, we were talking about, the accountability side, and there's a lot of different ways of doing that and having accountability and everything. Like I said, we run on Traction or EOS. What are some other stuff that you've seen that people work that's been successful for them?
No, I'm not a technologist, so I've used just a tool for 30 years that's pretty basic, and you can put it in Word or Excel. We've put it, a client of mine, after I went over it with him, they put it on SharePoint, mm-hmm. So that you don't have to wait till the weekly staff meeting to go over everything. Everything's live and it's dynamic. So as you're doing your so you have, what needs to be done. And I break any company down by 5 functional areas. Sales and marketing is one. That includes everything they're trying to promote your business. Operations, whatever it takes to deliver your product or service to your customer. Right. Finance and accounting, all of that. HR and technology. Those are 5 functional areas, regardless of your industry, right? So you break your business down into those 5, and then when you break down what needs to be done under each of those things, not everything that you got going on, but what moves the needle? What's the most impactful things you have going on?
Mm-hmm.
Who's going to do that? What is it? Who's going to do it? What's its current state? When are you going to finish? When's it going to be finished? And I was talking to somebody this week, and I said, change the question away from, because inevitably some stuff gets done on time, some doesn't. So you do all that. Some stuff's not going to happen. Instead of asking, why did you not get it done? Change the narrative and say, what do we have to do? What do we have to do to finish? So you're changing the whole narrative from a negative, why did we not get it done? You get a whole bunch of excuses, which really don't matter, to what do we need to do to finish? Oh, well, we just have to do A, B, and C. Okay, let's go. Let's divide and conquer. So you change the narrative from negative to a positive, focusing on finishing. But you put those names on paper, whether it's a piece of paper or SharePoint or EOS, that raises accountability.
It does.
Your name's on there, like, that guy wants me to, by golly, he wants me to do that.
Yeah, it makes total sense. So we talked about accountability that helps towards ensuring a good remote work culture. What are some other things that you could think of that help with that?
Just you're going to have to really constantly communicate and be intentional. The business owner, the leaders, executive team, being intentional about communication and not just haphazard. It just makes us as leaders, we got to be better,
Yeah. What are some? I'll get a little more specific. I'll give an example too. Have you seen anything specific that you thought was really cool that a company has done to help keep that communication and that culture alive in a more remote workforce?
The one that I was talking about is actually not remote because it's more of a recycling. So you got people hands on.
Sure.
But they put that accountability matrix together that I gave them, put it on SharePoint, then they use it, daily. But now everybody's updating it every day.
Yeah.
So the owner can look at it throughout the week instead of once a week.
Right.
And then if he needs to follow up with people, he can go like, okay, where are you on this? Now what's going on here? What do we need to do to finish?
Yeah.
What do we need to do to finish? And it works and it helps.
So, and that's probably, like, to me, that's more on the accountability and the number side of it, but the culture side of just, this is a good place to work. And how do you keep and maintain that in a remote work spot? Like, for example, what we have quarterly parties where we get everybody together and we'll go do something really cool. We've got now and that was when we were more hybrid. Now that we're full remote, we're going back to doing a monthly happy hour type thing, and then having 2 big parties a year just to get everybody together, spend a little money on it, because we're saving. You save money on office space, you save money on other things. So we try to invest back into just having a group of people together that like to be together and hang out together.
I think that's important if you can do that. Depends on how big you are and how diverse,
and how spread out
you are. But I think to the extent that you can actually get together in person and do something or do nothing together, do some type of, food is always great.
Yeah.
Sitting down at the table, breaking bread, food connects people.
It does.
No matter who you are, where you are in the country, food connects. You could do some type of community service thing. I mean, find something to do in the community. There's plenty of stuff going on. There's plenty of stuff in Nashville to do.
Yes, Second Harvest is one of our customers, and right now that's a huge thing. They love for companies to come and spend the day with them.
I'm going to one not tomorrow, but next Saturday, one generation away. They feed people.
Yeah,
I'm just going to go. And I need to do that when I've heard
it's a lot of fun. I mean, they have a very rigid of how you're there. There is no wasted time.
Yeah, they're very well organized.
3 hours, and you've given them 3 full hours of volunteer work.
I've done it with my sons, and it's a great thing.
Yeah,
I just need to do more of it.
Yeah, Habitat's another one. It's another one of our customers, and they're really good in how you get volunteer, you come in, you get your time, and they get every minute of it. And I've been visiting a church in Spring Hill, and this past Sunday, the service was cut short, and they had planned this whole thing. They were building 3 houses in the parking lot that day. Wow.
And they partnered with somebody, it wasn't Habitat, it was somebody else who
built. It's like tiny houses. They built them.
They built all the walls. They had, they had that thing so well organized. Okay. I didn't build a house because I can't hammer a nail. Yeah. But they did that. So people are working together. And when you do that, you connect and you talk and you get over. So you got to do that in the workplace. Do something, you go bowling if you want to, there's tons of stuff to do around Nashville.
Yeah, we've done bowling, we've done axe throwing, we've done just all these different. We did this one thing that was pretty cool. One time we had hired a party bus to come pick us up at the office. And then we have a lot of restaurants as clients. So we went and had a happy hour at one restaurant.
Progressive dinner.
Yeah, did a progressive dinner. And then we had them take it over and had, dinner at another restaurant and then dessert at another restaurant. And we got to visit our customers. And it was a really cool event. It was a lot of fun.
We did something similar. I was on a business trip in Chicago, and we did a progressive dinner. And they had a lot of little ethnic areas of the town. So we go to Little Italy for this, Little Greece for that, Little China for this, Little Mexico for that. It was fabulous.
Yeah.
It was just fabulous. And you get a taste not only of the food, but the culture and the people.
Yeah.
I mean, that's memorable.
Yeah. The EO chapter that we have here in Nashville, it's actually the third largest chapter in the world. It's a massive chapter. And every year we do a progressive dinner. And this last year we did it here in downtown Franklin. And we're talking 300 people that come to this thing. And so they break it up, and you do cocktails at one, a salad at another, the main one, and then everybody gets together so you've hit like 4 different places. And every time they mix it up, and you've got all new group of people at your table.
Oh, that's great.
So with a group that big, there's a lot of people you don't know, right?
Sure.
I mean, that's an evolving door of people. So it's really cool it's the best event they have every year, because you get to meet all these people and sit down and talk to them for 30 minutes or so before you go to the next spot. Really, really interesting. Well, hey, Gary, thank you for being on the show. Before we wrap up, I wanted to just say thank you so much for being on. Tell us a little bit how our people can find you and engage you if they want to bring you in and use your services.
Sure. Well, I've got 2 websites. You can find me at GaryAldridge.com. Okay. You can also go to LeveragingYou.com, which will tell you all about the online course that I have, which teaches business owners how to maximize the value of business. You can find my email addresses on there. It's Gary@GaryAldridge.com. It's pretty easy. And that's how you can find me. My phone number's on there. You can find me as well.
Well, again, thank you for being on here. It's been a great conversation. I've enjoyed it. I hope you've enjoyed being on. Well, that's it for this episode of The Wandering Worker. As always, we hope you've enjoyed hearing from our guests today, and make sure you mark your calendars for our next podcast, where we will continue to dive deep into the world of the wandering worker. We'd also like to thank our sponsor, Magic Apple, for bringing you this episode today. If you're not thrilled with your business phone system or your work from home experience, give us a shout. We've been helping people since 2008. Again, I am Matt Lloyd. Until next time, thank you. Have a good week.